then you can turn your cameras off. But yeah. So it's one, I think, just to acknowledge what it is us therapists are dealing with at the moment, but also that there's an enormous amount of hope. And the thing is with groups is it's an opportunity to reach more people and to help more people than we can on a one-on-one basis. And I feel like we've got a really important role to play during these times. And the great thing about a group is, like, one, the clients seem to want it, the demand is there for groups. But two, it also creates a bit of financial security for us as well. So it makes it more affordable for the client, which in these times of financial uncertainty is a win for them. But it also brings in a steady stream for us. So we can benefit from that as well. And if you're anything like me, you'll enjoy running groups. They're a lot of fun. They're really satisfying. They can be quite challenging in their ways, but they can be really, really rewarding too. And I think what a lot of therapists and counsellors that I talk to about this, the common theme that I'm getting again and again is that people, they don't feel ready. They don't feel like they know enough. They haven't got the right CPD, so they don't want to run groups for that reason. But kind of, I suppose what I would want to say to that is most of the time, and I'm not saying that CPD isn't helpful or important, but we learn by doing. When you started training, you would have started seeing clients. In most courses, you start seeing clients on placement in your second year. So you start doing the work before you're qualified. You start doing the work when you only know a small part of this syllabus that you're supposed to learn. And if you're anything like me, like in the second year when I started seeing clients, that's when all the theory started making sense anyway, because you could actually apply it to all the work that you were doing. So today isn't about me sitting here and giving you a big talk about how to run groups. I really want to know, like, what the anxieties are, what your questions are about, whether it's the practicalities of running groups, whether you want to know about how to find participants, or you want to talk a bit about the logistics of managing group dynamics. That's kind of, it's entirely up to you. So I'm going to open it up for people to just ask questions, and we'll have a conversation about this and see if you can go away, one, hopefully feeling a little bit inspired that this is possible and a really good route forward, and also that you know a bit more and you have a bit more confidence that this is something you could actually do. So on the bottom where it says participants, I think, if you click on that, you can raise your hand to ask a question, and then I'll just unmute you and you can ask your questions, because there are no stupid questions. So does anybody have a question? Did anyone come in here today with something that they felt they really wanted to get out of today or know about running groups?
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah, go on, Denise.
What I struggle with is that online, everybody talks over one another, and how do I get people to not necessarily take it in turns, but I think it's just all of a sudden everybody chips in, and then I don't know how to, I sort of struggle to either wait till they've all finished and it calms down, or whether to then point the finger, you can speak now, or you can speak now, and it doesn't feel very I don't know, congruent, if you like, that I'm sort of dictating who speaks when, but it's how do you manage that, I guess?
Mm-hmm. I think each group tends to develop its own personality. So depending on the group, you'll see whether you need to introduce muting options, because one of them is like having everyone mute themselves and they can unmute to speak. So they have control of that. But in the moment that it takes to unmute, people can see who's unmuting and they're just less likely to talk over each other. It is a little bit tricky at times, but on the whole, I've found with the group that I'm working with at the moment, there has been a lot of space and there's been an enormous amount of respect. But I think it's fascinating from group to group how different groups are. And I think you'll work with some groups where you'll have people clamoring to speak, and you'll work with other groups where people leave a lot more space. And I think also bringing it in and giving the group some choice. So if you're noticing people are talking over each other, I think sometimes as the facilitator, we think that we're supposed to figure out the solution to any issue in the group and then present it to the group. But you can put it out to the group, like, we're talking over each other a lot. How do we manage this? How might we think about this? And bring them in, because it's a co-created effort, any group. When people talk about groups being hard work, I often think, I think you're doing more work than you need to. Get the group to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's something about differentiating the therapy group from a supervision group to a peer group because when you come online, there's sort of something about forgetting what it is you're doing, or who you are in that group, maybe, because it feels the same.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, like, because you put it on. If you're using something like Zoom, I suggest using gallery view when you've got a group, because you can see everyone's faces.
Yeah.
And normally, when you're doing a group in person, you don't get to study everyone's faces in the way that you get to do now. You can see when something's going on for someone. And so in those moments, I might, again, it depends on the group and the situation, but I might say to someone, you know, what was going on for you, Claire, when Amy said that? Those are just random names.
Yeah.
So I think it's an opportunity you can see more of what's going on. So I think there are real benefits as well to the therapeutic process, but there are always going to be challenges which would come up with technology and just not being in the room together.
Are you finding Zoom the best thing to use for your groups?
I think so. I haven't gone with any of the other platforms because I'd done Zoom groups in, like, for social reasons. It seemed to make the most sense to me. It seems to have everything that you need, and because it's a well-known one, a lot of clients will have used it before. And with anybody who hasn't, I always do a test run with them before, because that is the worst, to end up with technical issues on the day. Yeah. Making sure that all your participants are familiar with how to use Zoom and can get in and get their audio and video working.
Yeah, I suppose rather than spending half an hour trying to make sure everybody's up to speed or got them this turned on or that turned on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Denise. If anyone's got a question, I think you can just unmute yourself. I think we've got enough people. We haven't got too many people that I think that would cause an issue.
I've got a question. Do you have some effectively ground rules as to how the work is, how the group is running before it all happens?
Yes. So I've got a contract written up that I'm in the process of still tidying up. Needs to be done by Monday before the second group runs. If anyone wants a copy of that, give us a shout and I'm happy to email you a copy. But it's basically things like everybody in the group to wear headphones, non-negotiable, regardless of whether you live on your own. It's just about voices traveling to uncontained spaces. So that's non-negotiable, that everybody does that. There are things around payment which you can work out for yourself, but for me, I take a 2-week deposit which holds their space in the group. So it means if anybody disappears, you're not going to end up with sessions not paid for. And that 2 weeks deposit pays for the last 2 weeks in the group. So I ask people to give 2 weeks notice to leave the group, because I run my groups open-ended. Some people might want to run them for like 8 weeks. If you're running a course or something a bit more structured, you may want to do it for 8 weeks. But I think, again, pros and cons. The thing I like about the open-ended is that I'm very clear to people, like, you can come for as long as you want. So people feel a lot more like it's something they can just try out, and it gives them permission to stay or to go. And when we have permission to stay or go, when we choose to stay, I think that's much more powerful than when we feel like we have to stay because we've signed up to this 8-week course and we're going to lose money if we don't. We want people in the group that want to be in the group and are committed to being in the group. And for that reason, I always explain to people that you're paying for your space in the group, you're not paying for your attendance. So what that means is if they don't make it 1 week, they still pay for that week. And this really helps it really encourages regular attendance. Otherwise, I think, especially with an open-ended group, there's a risk that people might start using it as drop-in support. And if you're looking at group therapy and creating this group dynamic and learning about our dynamics from each other, it's really important to have people in the group who want to be there.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
Sarah.
Hi, David.
Oh, hi. I was just interested to know, you said when you put it out there, you got an amazing response. Mm-hmm. Where did you put it out?
Okay. So I use Instagram.
Right.
I do YouTube videos. So I recorded a YouTube video, which was nothing to do with running a group. And just at the end of the video, I mentioned, I'm going to be setting up a group next week. Let me know if you're interested. And a couple of people contacted me within an hour putting that video up. And then when I put it on Instagram, again, within an hour, I'd had another 3 inquiries through Instagram. Now, normally when I used to run groups in person, one of the things I found worked really, really well, it's so simple, was just posters up locally. But this is a different world now. We're online. The only place you could put a poster is probably the supermarket. And I don't think people are hanging around to read the notice boards at the moment. They're in and they're out. You know, they're not waiting around. Yeah. They're probably not going to see it, which means our only option is to go online. So when I set up the groups before, I used Facebook ads, and that worked really well for me as well. So this was sort of a year and a bit ago when I was setting a group up. I used Facebook ads, and within 24 hours, I had about 8 inquiries. And the thing with groups as well is that you don't need to set yourself a lot of time to advertise it. So the first one, I made the mistake of, I started to advertise in October, and it wasn't starting till the end of January. And a week before the group started, nobody had signed up within a week. And then in those last 2 to 3 days, they flooded in. There's a bit of a scarcity mindset that comes with a deadline. So the other thing I would really encourage you as well is hold your nerve. So if you want to get stuff out there, like, are there other therapists that you know that would be willing to share it? Other people you know that might put it on their website, or even friends and family sharing it on their Facebook? If you really get, like, using whatever it is that you have, you might not have a big platform at the moment, but you'll have people close to you, I imagine, who would be willing to do that for you. And I've said, I'm always happy that if any of you want to set up a group, if you go on canva.com, the design one, and design they call it a story, a Facebook story or an Instagram story, a little advert, and send it to me, I'll share it on my stories on Instagram. I'd happily do that because I want more therapists to be running groups. So I'm happy to promote your groups too.
Thank you. That'd be good. That'd be really good. I'll have to try and find you on Facebook, thanks. I've just clicked on the link, basically.
Yeah, no worries. On everything, because I work with binge eating, so on everything, I am the binge eating therapist. So right. That's my website, thebingeeatingtherapist.com. That's my Facebook page. It's my Instagram. It's my YouTube. And on that note, I really recommend, if you're going to do a therapy group, is to have some kind of subject, even if it's vague. So mine is binge eating, but people joining a group is quite nerve-wracking. People want to know that there are going to be people that understand them or that are going to relate to them. So even if it's group therapy for anxiety or for loneliness, might be a good one at this time. Whatever it might be, have something, some vague topic. It's always going to be about everything, but I think that's what you need in order to target down, because general therapy groups, what I tend to notice is they're full of therapists or trainee therapists. I don't think the public really know much about, like, what does a therapy group mean? What kind of people would be in a therapy group? I think people want to think that there are going to be some people like them there in order for them to see it as an attractive option.
Yes, I think my main anxiety is about running a group. I mean, I've done individual work on Zoom, which is fine, but running a group, I have the practicalities of it are the main anxieties, such as, like, am I going to get enough people? And if I do get enough people, am I going to develop a waiting list? And what do I do with that? Mm-hmm. And then once I start running the group, am I going to get dropouts? And if it drops out too much, have I still got a group? Or have do I then bring new people in? And there's loads.
Yeah. And I think that's getting the group going. I think you will face that. So I generally, when I start a new group, there's always 2 or 3 people that drop out in the first month. And again, that's kind of to be expected.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I've run groups with 2 people before, just because for whatever reason only 2 people have been able to attend, and I would still run a group for 2. And I have it in my agreement that if, for example, only 1 person was to show up, that we would do a 50-minute individual session. So you're not doing 90 minutes with 1 person and that kind. So there is a lot, I think, in this, as I said before, about holding your nerve. Yeah. And things like technical issues, I make it quite clear that everyone else is responsible for their technology. So if their technology fails, I can't do anything with that. If my technology fails, we'll know about it because everybody will experience that. And if for some reason my internet went down and the group had to be abandoned that week, then I would refund everybody for that week. But on the technical stuff, it's really kind of asking everybody to take personal responsibility for that.
Yes, thank you.
No worries.
Useful.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, I guess on that area of having a topic, I'm aware that like a couple of weeks ago was the point at which I thought maybe this is a way that I can offer support to more people by running a group. And I'm still kind of balancing up, as I think a lot of therapists are, how much of that is a rescue and react thing and how much of it is you know, a response that's going to be helpful for me in the longer term as well. And I guess the attraction of groups is something about there's a lot of narrative around at the moment about people's mental health, and actually losing sight of the fact that people are responding in ways that are perfectly natural in this situation, and the opportunity for them to actually voice how they're feeling is and for that to be listened to is more relevant than them needing therapy. But I kind of feel that maybe a therapy group is an opportunity to kind of encapsulate both of those things, that kind of need to be heard, and also that kind of more longer term work on stuff. And I work with a lot of people on a one-to-one basis who have anxiety in some form or another, and so I had kind of envisaged that would probably be what I would be saying the group was about. But I'm also aware that, you know, there's quite extremes when you say anxiety in terms of kind of need for support. And so I guess I'm wondering about get to the question, Lucy, about that kind of assessment process of how you go about that. And I'm also mindful that I've got a client at 10:30, so I will disappear suddenly at some point.
No problem. Yeah, I think any topic, even with me, like with the binge eating, there are people that will contact me that need a much higher level of care than what I can offer in the group. And so in terms of the assessment, it's just a little bit like when you do an assessment with a one-to-one client. And a big part of it, I think, is in that assessment, what are their expectations from the group? Because that, I think, is what retains people in the group, or you lose people. It's managing the expectations. And one of the things I found really helpful is, like, every month, and now it's every month, it used to be every 6 weeks with 6 participants, I do a half-hour one-to-one with each participant. And that helps me to see where they are in the group, what are their struggles, what are their concerns, and encourage them to bring their processes back into the group if it's appropriate. But I think, yeah, with the assessment process, like, you assess clients to work with on an individual basis all the time. So I think it's being clear, like, what is it that you are trying to create in the group? What is it you imagine the group can offer? And communicating that well to the client and seeing what their expectations and their needs are, and then trying to make a decision about how to balance the two. But yeah, and I have turned people away from the group. And a couple of people away from the group because it just wasn't suitable.
Thanks.
And that can be hard. You know, we want to help people as therapists, so to say to someone, you know, but with this, because I work with eating disorders as well, I tend to have, like, quite strict rules around safety and about contact with GPs and all of this. And I've had to become a bit more relaxed about that in this situation because of the current people are not having the same access to their healthcare as well. So it's balancing, like, in these, I am going to use the word, unprecedented times, you know, how far are we willing to bend, yet still feel like we can hold enough? And that might be a question, like, to discuss with peers or your supervisor to find where your mind is on that.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, for me, the least anxious part about it is the online stuff, because over 50% of my practice was online anyway. So transferring my clients online was relatively straightforward. But that is, I'm mindful that is an aspect in which I manage risk differently when I'm online than when I'm working with someone in person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pop off now. I'll catch the recording.
No worries. Thanks for coming.
Can I ask about topics a bit more, just to clarify? In my mind, when I was going to do a group with people, I would have a fairly sort of narrow topic. But I guess I had in mind like an 8-week thing. So maybe it's different if you're doing an open-ended, and I need to think about that. But I was thinking, not going binge eating, discuss, but more what can I do about binge eating when I'm lonely, or really narrow. Is that what you're doing, or are you just going very wide and basically asking people what they want to discuss? And is it different every time, or is there some kind of thread that's running throughout the session?
Mm-hmm. When I set up a new group, in the first session we discuss what it is that people want from the group,
Mm-hmm.
how do they want the group to be structured, and on the whole it seems to be that people wanted the freedom to be able to come in with whatever it is that's going on for them. Okay. I'm not I think it can be quite useful, particularly with some groups, to have a topic, and I think if it was a topic I would just pose it as a question. Okay. So there's a question to be thought about and discussed, and then you can take it deeper with that question. But I think often, again, that idea that as the facilitator, we're supposed to somehow know what the group is supposed to be. I think the whole point is that the group together, you might work slightly different because of yours is nutritional therapy. Mm-hmm. But the group together can decide, what do we want this to look like? Mm-hmm. How do we want their sessions? I throw it back at them. Do you want subjects each week? Do you want it to be more free-flowing? Perhaps we do 20 minutes on a subject and the rest of the time free-flowing. Okay, that makes sense. And just to tag on to that question, are the people who attend to your groups, are they current clients, or are they people who might not want one-to-one and feel more comfortable in a group, either financially or just personally? Yeah, I used to be quite strict in that I wouldn't work with people one-to-one at the same time as they were in a group. And that had always been my place, because I was worried a bit about dual relationships, and you have a different relationship with one member of the group and what that does to the group dynamics. And then within the space of a week, I'd had 3 requests from people within the groups for individual sessions. And I hadn't had any for a year. And then I got 3 in 1 week. So I took it to supervision, and I thought about this and talked about what do we think about this? And again, I brought it back to the group. So now, my stance with the groups, it's kind of been agreed with the groups, is that I don't work with anyone regularly on an individual basis who's in the group. But if people want to book an ad hoc individual session because they're really struggling with something at the moment, or they need the extra support, I will do ad hoc sessions. But there are very clear boundaries that we don't talk about what's going on in the group or any members of the group. And that's one area that we just don't go to. But because I do the half-hour one-to-ones with everybody anyway, I get a little bit of one-on-one time evenly with everybody in the group. Because I think it really helps. There'll be things going on for people that they're not comfortable bringing into the group that they might then tell me on a one-to-one basis, and I can think with them about what is the impact on the group of whatever it is that's going on for them. And you said your one-to-one are half an hour. How often do you do them? Well, when I was doing them in person, every week a different member of the group would just arrive half an hour early. So it was every 6 weeks when it was in person with 6 members. Now that we're online, I've upped it to 1 a month at the moment. So I'm doing them monthly currently. But if we was in person, I would just do it, week by week. Okay, thank you. No worries.
Can I ask, Sarah, do you use any handouts or worksheets or anything with clients? And if you do, how do you do it?
I don't, because mine's a lot more of a process group. I haven't used worksheets. I mean, I assume that if you did, you probably need to email them between sessions and get people to look and reflect if there's something, or after the sessions. Yeah, I don't know how that might work within the sessions. Some people have printers, some people don't. So,
well, that's what I do at the moment. I email them before the session, but I was just wondering if there was some more instant way that you knew about.
You can share your screen on Zoom. So if you had something that you wanted, like, I don't know, if you had a diagram that you wanted to show them that illustrated something really well, you can share your screen with participants. It's at the bottom. There's just a green share screen button.
I know that one.
Yeah. But apart from that, it's not something I really use.
All right, thank you.
No worries.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Karen.
Thanks for inviting me in. I think a couple of the questions that I had, people have just asked and have been answered, so that's really, really helpful. And I was wondering about the kind of the structure of your group sessions. So it sounds like you're using it as a process space, rather than sort of psychoeducational. I just kind of, do you start with a check-in? How do you kind of initiate the session? Do you kind of let them just come in and be, or do you kind of have it structured?
So what I do on the very first group session with any new group is that, as an icebreaker, I get everyone to describe or to give me what they're hoping for from the group and what the fear is.
Yeah.
And then with the hopes and fears, you go through those to create the boundaries in the group contract. But it also, from what they've said and using their words, I create a group statement. So every group I run has a different statement based on what gets discussed in that first session. And so then at the beginning of every group, it was someone in the group read the statement out. Now we're online, I'm reading the statement out. The statement gets read out. And I love the statement because it reminds us all why we're there. It reminds us of the boundaries of the group. And it's quite a ritualistic start, which kind of gets people settled and arrived. So we read the statement out, then we have a check-in, and then I open the floor up to whoever to speak, and then a check-out at the end. So that's
so you do,
so
you do the check-in and check-out.
I do, yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I think because the context for my groups is slightly different. They vary. There's a few different ones that I've been doing. I work with neurodiverse people, so it's generally ADHD and autism. Now that I can kind of see how it is and that people can mute and unmute their mics, I think that actually might add a real sense of safety for the women that I've been working with. So I kind of really like that format. At the moment, I've got 4 of you on one screen, and then there's 4 windows on another screen, so I can flick backward and forward. So technically, is that how it looks, or can you sort of change
Karen, if you move to are you on a laptop or a tablet?
I'm on a phone.
On a phone. Try swiping the screen across.
Yeah.
Oh, right, because on a laptop you have something called gallery view. And on gallery view, you can see everybody at once. Because in a group, it's ideal to be able to see everyone at once.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
On devices, and I think particularly on phones, it only limits you to seeing a certain number of faces. But I think perhaps on the tablets, you can see everyone.
But I think even just doing this with you now, I can see my phone's moving as I'm moving. So it kind of needs to be I'm kind of how I can see how you're presenting, sort of the distance that you're sitting, you're quite still. It's kind of got that anchoring, that stabilizing presence, and I think that's really helpful because it kind of is reassuring in terms of anxiety and in terms of kind of entering into something new, that you've kind of got that visual work. And
even light, thinking about light. So I sit in front of the window, but in the evenings, obviously when it's dark, my light is behind me, which would make my face look shadowed. So I have like a tall lamp, and I pull the lamp sort of in front of me so that I'm lit up. I think that's really important as well for a sense of feeling connected.
That's what you can see. If you can see me, you can see I've got the light behind me, which is just not working at all. So I kind of need to shift around and get the space working. So all of those things, and although they might seem like sort of the smaller technical things, I think that they're really important to kind of get a feeling, to kind of experience working like this, to get a feeling of what it's like for the client to kind of come into the group. So the other thing that I've got, one of the other ones that we do, is I've got young people's groups, to the teenagers, and traditionally we've run it twice a month, so it's not 2 weekly, but twice a month. And one of the sessions is therapeutic, so it's kind of processy, and one of it's more interactive. And I suppose my thoughts are, I'm just going to go to them and kind of get an idea, but I wanted to have the parameters in place of how that might work. So has anyone done any groups with young people?
By young, you mean teenagers?
Teenagers, yeah. I could see the people I could see were shaking their heads no. So yeah, I guess I just need to kind of think about what I need to, and I think even hearing what you're saying, keeping the headphones in, that kind of helps people know that what they're saying is private, so that's really helpful. And I know that you said you do more processing more than psychoeducational, but I think with my young people I'd be wanting to break it up with some activities which you can kind of do, shared drawings and things like that on the screen, can't you?
Yeah, yeah.
But I just wondered if you had any sort of thoughts or reflections for transitioning from so there won't be new people meeting, there'll be people that have already been in groups together for both of those groups, and some of them, I think they've been running for about 3 years, so they've got existing relationships. So I just sort of, any thoughts about how that transfers into a digital process?
It might be a case of you transfer it and then you see.
Yeah, I guess.
Just a thought about boundaries, like if there are existing relationships, like I don't know how you work in terms of contacts outside the group. Are these people that know each other outside of the group? And then how does that impact inside the group?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's they hadn't when they came together, they hadn't known each other, but they do have some of them have a WhatsApp group that's together. So yeah, it's the usual things about making sure that they know that we can't monitor it. We can't monitor those groups, and that, to take care about how they communicate and things like that. I mean, is there anything else that you put in terms of your group guidelines about communication outside the groups?
Yeah, so I used to, on the advice of a group analyst that I spoke to, I used to give the group the option about whether they had contacts outside the group. And then, without saying too much, because this is going to be going on social media because it's being recorded, I got burned. So now for me, it's really important not to. These, the boundaries are there for safety, but if we're very clear about what the contact might be and why, it's not this hard, you can never speak to each other outside of the group. But it really is discouraged because it really does impact safety.
Yeah,
really,
I hear
it really isn't advisable. Sometimes people will ignore it, and then you have no control over that. But I think you can still sort of lay down what is it you need in order for the group to be safe. A couple of people are meeting. How does the rest of the group feel about that? 2 people having coffee, and they probably going to talk about the group because that's what they have in common.
Yeah. So the guidelines we would be setting out is that's part of the contract, is that you don't set up groups, that you don't kind of communicate outside of the therapeutic setting, and that's kind of what's part of the agreement. And as you say, it's difficult to police, but that's you're contracting with people. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. I'll listen to the other questions as well now. Thanks.
No worries. Thanks, Karen.
I'm guessing that kind of ties in with what Karen had asked, but do you find that people ask you questions outside of the group? They get in touch and say, well, hi Sarah, I was thinking about this, and how would you respond to this? What should I do in these circumstances? Because it happens to me quite a lot outside of groups on one-to-one, and some people are really good and some people are not, and they bombard me with questions and it's quite hard to handle. Do you find that it's the case with groups?
I think if you're anticipating that because you've had it before, you might want to just think about how you contract and set the expectations up at the beginning. Because it's really hard when there's no boundary around that and it starts coming to then say to people, no, this is not okay.
Yeah, okay.
It might be, if you decide to do the monthly one-to-ones, it might be like, this is the only contact that we will have outside the group. If you have queries or concerns, I ask you to ask me in the group. I think it's just about, like, for you, protecting yourself as well in that, so that you're not constantly responding to queries here and there. But it's not something I've really experienced in the group. I've had it with individual clients before, but it's not something I've really come across much in the group. They seem to, be doing that.
Okay, good. Thanks.
No worries. Anyone else? No? Okay. Thanks everyone for coming today. Oh, Denise is just unmuted. Denise, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was just going to ask about numbers per group. Do you have a limited amount of people in your group? How do you decide how many people in the group?
Yeah. So for me, I've capped it at 6. That's what I was doing when I was doing the in-person group, and I just chose 6 because I thought 90 minutes, that feels like that there is time and space for everybody to speak if they want to. So you might have a larger group, you might have a smaller group. I've just gone with 6, not for any great theoretical reason. I just feel like it's a number that makes sense in a group setting.
And does that work sort of financially? How do you work that out? Who's paying? I guess there's a lot of people are going to come to a group because, yes, there is the link that they have something in common, but also the fact, it's financially, it's more viable for a lot of people. But I guess, does everyone get charged the same? I was just thinking about payments and what happens with that. How do you work that out, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of like when I advertise my group, it's kind of a one price. That's what you pay to join the group. But I have had concession spaces that I've done at my own discretion. I don't advertise that I offer concessions, but I would consider it. And then again, that's the great thing about a group. If you've got 6 people in a group and you've got 4 or 5 of them that are paying the full price, it might be okay then in terms of looking after yourself and what you need financially from it as well, to be able to offer that. So it's a real opportunity perhaps for someone who really is of much less financial means to be able to get some support. But I think that's an individual choice. So I used to, like, the Thursday morning groups used to be a bit cheaper than the Tuesday evening groups, because the Tuesday evening groups was people who were in full-time employment. Whereas the Thursday morning groups just had a different kind of group of people. So yes, but the great thing is that you can choose whatever it is that you feel is reasonable, that's going to balance making it affordable for your clients and also meeting financial needs for yourself.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. I really appreciate your time, and do please keep in touch and let me know how your groups are going and if I can answer any questions. I'm running some training in a couple of weeks' time, a half-day workshop if you're interested, about how to set up online groups and managing group dynamics. I didn't want this to turn into a big pitch for that, but if you're interested, you can check that out on my website. And if any of you want me to promote your groups on my social media, I'm more than happy to do that. So please get in touch with that. And if anybody is really uncomfortable with that being recorded and it's going to be going out on social media, again, contact me separately and I'll see about like blocking you out or cutting out your bit if you're not comfortable with that. But it will be going on social media, because a few people have contacted me saying they would have liked to have joined us today, but they couldn't because they had clients and other things on. So thanks everyone, and good luck, and take care of yourself at this time. And yeah, thanks for listening. I'll end the meeting now.
Thank
Bye
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.